as part of its objective to observing independent National Electoral Commission's conformity to the Electoral Act and global best practices in election administration, the Justice Development and Peace Commission and Catholic Caristas Foundation of Nigeria has released its final report on the 2023 General Election Observation at a press conference in Abuja. Part of the statement issued at the press conference by the Executive Secretary of Caristas Nigeria, Reverend Father Uchechukwu Obodochina, was that there was a display of incompetence on the day of the election by the staff of INEC who came to their various polling units with incomplete electoral equipment.
Our findings. As stated earlier, the Church and Society Department, including Caristas Nigeria, deployed trained observers for the conduct of the 2023 general elections. Based on the reports of the various categories of observers, the following findings were made. 1. There were widespread and very embarrassing displays of unpreparedness and or incompetence on election day by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, whose staff and personnel turned up at their polling units very late with incomplete equipment in most cases. Some of these staff were inexperienced, were evidently not properly trained on the election equipment and procedure required before their deployment, or they acted written scripts calculated to undermine the process. 2. The logistics arrangement for transportation and other issues that would have aided the smooth movement of officials and materials to the polling units were very poorly coordinated. Thus, polling officials and materials arrived very late in most polling units, especially during the presidential and National Assembly elections. 3. Some voters who were transferred to the new polling units to decongest the old polling units had to trek long distances in search of their new polling units. A good number of them got frustrated and walked back home. 4. The presence of security officials at the polling units was grossly inadequate to maintain orderliness and guarantee the protection of people and electoral materials. Where they were available, some looked the other way as hoodlums ransacked the polling units and vandalized sensitive election materials. In fact, security personnel in some cases aided the commission of infractions on the integrity of the electoral process through the elections. 5. There was a low turnout of voters, especially during the governorship and state house of assembly elections, and this was largely attributable to the unsatisfactory ways the presidential result was handled. 6. The BVAS machine performed optimally well in the accreditation of voters through the elections, and we commend INEC in that regard. There were many cases of vote buying by desperate politicians and their talks through the elections. The results of the elections were not announced and pasted at most of the polling units as provided for under the enabling laws and rules. 9. INEC officials failed to upload the result of the presidential election to the IRF portal, explaining without conviction technical glitches that surprisingly affected only the transmission of presidential results. At the time of this report, INEC has not explained what those glitches were: technical, electronic equipment failure, or outright human manipulations. 10. There were instances where elections were rescheduled in some polling units, where elections could not hold on the 25th of February 2023, but some INEC returning officials compromised and went ahead to declare a candidate elected without recourse to the rescheduled elections. 11. There were incidents of electoral malpractices, intimidation, violence, and other irregularities in Lagos, Rivers, Delta, Imo, and Ebonyi states during the elections. 12. There were manifest calls to identity politics, differential citizenship, ethnic profiling, failure of consequences, complicit and partisan actions by some resident electoral commissioners, monetization of the electoral process, curious judicial pronouncements, and misuse of the power of incumbency. 13. There was no ceiling on the number of voters per polling unit. The implication was that while some polling units have as low as 100 voters, some others have as high as 3,000 voters. This added to the avoidable confusion and delimitation through the voting exercise. Recommendations. Given the findings of our observation mission and hoping for a better organized electoral process in subsequent elections in Nigeria, the following recommendations are put forward. 1. Proper training should be given to INEC officials on the use of election equipment and the rules expected of them for future elections. 2. Adequate logistical arrangements should be put in place for the orderly movement of personnel and materials from the local government areas to the registration area centers and the polling units. 3. Information on the status of every eligible voter and how to locate his or her polling unit, especially for those who were reassigned to new polling units, should be made available months before the election takes place. 4. INEC should do an in-depth analysis and review of the performance of its officials during the polls to hand out sanctions to those who deliberately brought the work of the Commission to ridicule during the elections. The widespread incidence of failure of consequences should be tamed to avoid impunity. 6. Security agencies should also examine the performance of their personnel during the elections. This should be done by looking at many video footages that were recorded during the elections. The attitude of protecting our own associated with the topmost echelon of security architecture should be done away with. 6. All reported cases of election-related offenses should be investigated and charged to court to serve as a deterrent to others. 7. The voting public should be adequately sensitized to the harm associated with votes vending and the illicit commerce that goes with it. 8. Holding all elections on the same day would be both cheaper and less burdensome and help in controlling the desperation of sitting governors and other incumbents who would be determined to install their cronies as successors. 9. We are of the view that further efforts should be made by INEC as permitted under the law to push for complete electronic voting during elections. It will reduce to the barest minimum the obvious infractions being experienced during elections in Nigeria. 10. We highly recommend that INEC should apologize to Nigerians for how its officials dashed the hopes of millions of Nigerians by conducting an election at first shot of not only the expectations of most Nigerians, but that of the international community, despite the huge funds approved for the exercise.
While assessing the report of the Caristas Nigeria, the National Deputy Chairman of Labour Party, Dr. Ayo Olorunfemi, and the President of the Albino Foundation, Jake Apele, who were both participants of the press conference, believe that the report of the Caristas Nigeria on the 2023 general election was scientific and meaningful.
The report is apt, very clear, and it's true, it's scientific. You can't fault it. Very scientific. These are things that are obvious on the street, and what the Caristas Nigeria has done is to put those things in their proper perspective, scientifically, not based on assumption, but to do what I call an observatory research on the last election and come out with a conclusion which is acceptable to all. Of course, even the people in government knows that all these things happen. We know that this deficiency are truly with us, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. It is there. It is the truth. Whether we accept it is another thing entirely. But what the report is saying is the truth.
Based institution like the Catholic Mission is interested in governance. I think it's something that we must underpin here. Secondly, I have also seen some very meaningful 95 or more percentage in terms of transparency of their process. It's worthy of note that they took their time, they did a good job. I was only concerned this segment of the society that is well over 27 million that was not particularly mentioned in the presentation, but I have been assured that is in the report. I haven't read the entire report because it was released just a minute ago, but it's important to underscore here that any segment of the society that is interrogating any important issue like this must not leave out inclusivity. And it's not only just inclusion of persons with disability. Inclusivity, though, it means women, youth, and persons with disability, especially the marginalized, you know. And I'm very, very impressed that your media organization is taking time to get our views on this. That makes you a primus inter pares, first among equal. Yeah, so I think that's what it is, and we hope that in the future there will be a designated, not only mention but inclusion. I am interested in knowing whether they had persons with disability as observers. 3,000 something is a lot of body of observers. So, but I'm interested to know whether there was a person with disability, and if there was not, please, as a media person, inform them that there should be a person with disability, so that we can tell our story by ourselves. You know.
From the view of the European Union and that of Caristas Nigeria report on the 2023 general election, the common man in Nigeria is eagerly waiting for the judiciary to prove if it was actually his last hope in Nigeria. Augustus Oche Ifene, Delegate TV, Abuja.